The Tennessee Titans got an absolute dog in Jermaine Johnson, but that doesn't mean that he's their new alpha edge rusher. I'll tell you everything you need to know about the newest Tennessee Titan on today's edition of Locked On Titans.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for a chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. On today's show, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about Jermaine Johnson, the newest Tennessee Titan, who the Titans acquired in the trade with the New York Jets, where they sent T'Vondre Sweat to the Big Apple. I'm going to tell you why Jermaine Johnson is absolutely a physical freak who fits perfectly within Robert Saleh's defense. But we'll also talk about some of the downsides with Jermaine Johnson and why I don't think that he's the new number one edge rusher for the Tennessee Titans. Before we get into all of it, I do want to thank you for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. Speaking of every day, shout out to my everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. Couldn't do it without you guys. If you aren't an everydayer, what are you doing? The Titans have already begun their roster moves. Clearly, free agency is a couple weeks away. The draft is right after that. If you want to stay as up to date, as entertained, and as informed as a Tennessee Titans fan could possibly be, make sure you stay locked in with the number one Tennessee Titans podcast in the world, Locked On Titans. But with that being said, again, more important than anything else, Jermaine Johnson is an absolute physical specimen. He is a freak of nature from a physical stature standpoint. This guy is 6'5", 265 pounds, 34-inch arms. It's a little bit longer than 34. I mean, this dude is a prototypical edge rusher built in a laboratory. He is an absolute specimen, okay? And he combines that prototypical size, that prototypical length as well, with just a relentless attitude out on the field. This guy's motor is always running non-stop. He never gives up on plays. He's always going 110% at all times, and that is exactly the type of player that the Tennessee Titans want in their defense. The Titans want guys who aren't just, the physical model of what you want, but who also have the mentality that you want out on the field. And Jermaine Johnson checks both of those boxes from a physical standpoint, from a mentality standpoint. He is I'm going to say this word a lot, a physical edge setter. Let's call it what it is. Jermaine Johnson is a better run defender right now than he is a pass rusher. Okay, he's a guy who's going to set an edge, set that wall in the run game, force the runner back inside to his help, which is exactly what you want to do. I bring this up all the time because it's one of the best football phrases that I've ever heard, and it came from Mike Vrabel. Edge, wall, swarm. That's how you play run defense. You set the edge, which turns the runner back inside. You create a wall by staying in your gaps and being assignment sound, and then you swarm to the ball carrier as a defense. That's what you do. And for a Tennessee Titans team that wants to have big, physical edge rushers that are able to do that, think about Femi Oladejo, 6'3", 260 pounds, super long arms. He is a guy who is going to be able to do that, and now you can have Jermaine Johnson on the other side who's going to do that as well. And again, a guy with a great mentality, whose motor is always running hot, is going to run down ball carriers. He's going to forklift offensive linemen and tight ends to make sure that he handles his assignment. He is an absolute specimen in that regard. Now, as a pass rusher, he is not a bad pass rusher, but, that's not maybe as elevated as maybe his run defense. But in pass rush, he is quite the technician for being a guy that size. Speed to power is his game. He wants to fly off the line of scrimmage. He wants to use his long arms and his strength and power to get in your chest and drive you back into the quarterback. He's got a good, nice long arm stab where he's able to use that length, get into your chest, and he has shown a little bit of a spin counter where he's able to spin back inside. He'll even try a little bit of an outside spin move from time to time as well. Now, outside of that, would I say that he's incredibly polished with, a cross chop or a rip? And does he have great bend and all of that? Not quite. And we'll talk about all of that stuff here in just a moment, where we talk about the reality that he is not your alpha dominant edge rusher, the edge one that the Tennessee Titans need. But again, the speed to power, being able to drive an offensive lineman back into a quarterback's lap, having a little bit of a long arm stab to utilize his length in a proper way, having somewhat of a counter when it comes to the spin move. You got to make sure that you have that counter, especially you're flying off the football with good explosion and good get off. You're getting upfield. You're using your speed to power. Offensive linemen are going to start to adjust to that. They're going to start to try to kick out a little bit wider. And the moment that you kick out a little bit wider to deal with my speed, boom, I hit you with the inside spin counter and you don't even know what's coming. Quite frankly, I would say Jermaine Johnson is very similar to a guy like David Bailey. Both 6'4", 6'5", really long arms, speed to power, good get off the line of scrimmage, spin back inside, use your big, thick, strong arms as a barrier to hold the offensive lineman inside during your spin move. I think there's a lot of comparisons there to what David Bailey's going to bring to the table and what Jermaine Johnson is able to bring to the table. And we talk about all this physical stuff. We talk about the frame at 6'5", 260, the 34-inch arms, the relentless personality, the great motor, and some of the aspects of his pass rush that do get you excited. But then you add in the personality. And the personality stuff is as impressive, quite honestly, as the physical stuff. Just in my short time researching Jermaine Johnson, to hear the way that Robert Saleh spoke about him, to hear the way that media people who cover the New York Jets talk about him, this is a guy who has elite football character, takes accountability, is a relentless worker, wants to improve at his craft nonstop at every step of the way. He is an incredible teammate as well in the locker room for the New York Jets. And my guy John Butchko from Locked On Jets is going to come on the show a little bit later at the end and talk about his experience with Jermaine Johnson and how he viewed this trade from both different sides. But not only John Butchko from Locked On Jets, but again, other media members who have covered the Jets. I've talked to one in specific. We've heard interviews with others since the trade has happened, but Jermaine Johnson was beloved in that locker room. Because when the season was going bad for the Jets, Johnson was the first guy that would say, we're not playing well enough. I'm not playing well enough. That sort of accountability, that sort of maturity, that sort of self-reflection, self-awareness, and intelligence, that is a perfect fit for the Tennessee Titans culture. That is literally exactly what the Tennessee Titans need to start building that locker room back to where it needs to be, is a guy who acts like that and will be a thumb pointer, not a finger pointer. And that is critical in team sports. So you add in the prototypical size, the relentless play style, the ability in the pass rush, and the technicalities that he has. And then you add in the personality. Again, is Jermaine Johnson the elite alpha edge rusher for the Tennessee Titans going forward? No, he isn't that. But what he is a perfect fit for what the Tennessee Titans need right now as they start to build their culture back and start to build their roster back. And he is a perfect fit as a 4-3 defensive end in Robert Saleh's system, which is ultimately what led to this move happening. Is this guy fits great in the scheme, he fits great in the locker room, and the guy that we got rid of does not fit in the scheme and does not fit in the locker room. And that's what truly matters. So a physical freak who is a perfect fit in the building. That's what you're getting in Jermaine Johnson. But Jermaine Johnson is far from a perfect player. There are downsides, and there are some reasons to be hesitant about whether this move will work out for the Titans. And I'm going to be honest with you and talk about those things as well. Do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Have you ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you a chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole experience. And if you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in, because now not only can your pick cash, but it can also send you to the NBA Finals. And if you know ball, then you know coming out of the break, we're about to enter the best portion of the NBA season. So make sure that you visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on any NBA future to get entered for a chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. I'm giving you everything you need to know about Jermaine Johnson as a player. I'm already diving into the tape to make sure that I get you guys a Tic Tac Titans film breakdown coming out very, very shortly. Hopefully on Friday afternoon is when that's going to drop. If you guys aren't subscribed to the Tic Tac Titans film channel to go along with all the discussions we have here on Locked On Titans, what are you really doing? Are you truly a diehard Tennessee Titans fan? Because I would bring that into question if you aren't diving into the tape with me over at Tic Tac Titans. But regardless, again, we talked about all of the great things that Jermaine Johnson brings to the table: the size, the prototypical build, the relentless attitude, the technicalities in this pass rush game, the personality. But this is not, Jermaine Johnson isn't the new alpha edge rusher that we've been searching for the Titans. I mean, maybe I'm wrong and he goes to a different level, and that's the case. But I see Jermaine Johnson as more of a Bud Dupree, Harold Landry style pass rusher, where he may not be your dominant number one rusher, but he could be a great complementary number two. And I think that's something that people need to keep in mind. And the reasons for that is, even when Jermaine Johnson was healthy, he doesn't really have great dip and bend to get underneath offensive tackles. I talked about the speed to power, the long arm, the spin counter, but this isn't a guy with, incredible handwork that's a true technician in there, where he's doing cross chops and swipes and, dips and rips and all these different things to combine with the bend around the edge. He's got great get off. He's got great length. He's got great power. A relentless motor, all of that. But is he like an elite technician in the pass rush game? No, not really. And if we're honest, if you start looking through the wins that he has, again, I compare it to like Bud Dupree, who in Pittsburgh was a great member of that team, because in Pittsburgh, he could be a cleanup guy like Harold Landry was a lot of the time. It's crazy. Harold Landry goes to the Patriots and becomes a way better technical pass rusher with a bunch of different moves that he never used in Tennessee. But Landry and Bud Dupree were both more cleanup guys. They're not boom, boom, beat the offensive tackle and I'm getting to the quarterback. I'm driving you back. The quarterback gets pressured by somebody else, and I'm there because I got relentless motor to clean it up. They are more of a secondary rusher type than that alpha pass rusher who is winning nonstop, okay? So that's a reality we have to accept here, is that Jermaine Johnson doesn't become the Titans' Max Crosby, Trey Hendrickson, Myles Garrett type guy. That's not who he is. He's going to be more in the mold of the Bud Dupree, Harold Landry. Now, the problem with Bud Dupree was the Titans paid him to be an alpha edge rusher when he wasn't, which is why I hated that signing from the moment that it happened. He was never the guy that he got paid to be by John Robinson. That was always bad. But Bud Dupree being paid properly at $8 to $10 million, that's a good value player. And that's what I think Jermaine Johnson should be for the Tennessee Titans. When Jeffrey Simmons wins up front and the quarterback gets flushed out of the pocket, Jermaine Johnson is going to be there to clean it up. So he's more of a cleanup sack guy than he is a clean winner in the pass rush. But when you have that size, you have that strength, you have that motor, you can win significantly with that style of play. Now, again, not the alpha pass rusher, but he doesn't have to be. And we need to set the expectation right now that that's not what he is. He is a guy who needs to be a part of a dominant rotation. Okay? Robert Saleh likes to have his front four guys and rush them. In a perfect world, that's what Robert Saleh wants to do. He wants to have 4 down linemen, and he wants to rush with them. Now, if you have that style of defensive pass rush mentality, what you need to have with it is depth. Think about the Eagles in 2024 when they won the Super Bowl. They had 7 or 8 guys on that defensive line that could rotate in and out all game long, always staying fresh, always getting after the quarterback. You do different combinations based on what's best against the offensive line and the offensive scheme that you're facing. That's what the Titans are going for here. You have Femi Oladejo. You have Jermaine Johnson. You sign a free agent edge rusher. You draft an edge rusher early in the draft. And now you have a combination to go with Jeffrey Simmons. Maybe a John Franklin Myers. Bring back Sebastian Joseph Day. Get another interior guy cheap in free agency. Or maybe you draft someone in the mid rounds to replace that T'Vondre Sweat role. Now you have your 7 to 8 pass rushers who you can rotate in and out. If they have a smaller offensive line, we're going heavy. We'll put Jeffrey Simmons out at end with Jermaine Johnson and John Franklin Myers inside and Sebastian Joseph Day inside and saying, hey, we're going heavy and coming at you. Go out in free agency and get a speed rusher. Maybe you draft a speed rusher in the NFL draft. And now we're going to go Jeffrey Simmons on the interior with John Franklin Myers. We're going to have a speed guy at one spot. And then we're going to have Jermaine Johnson as our cleanup guy. It's all about having depth on the defensive line and waves of pass rushers. And Jermaine Johnson, as part of a rotation, can be that. Okay? And here's something that has to be considered as well. If it doesn't work out, if Jermaine Johnson hasn't recovered from the Achilles, his explosion, his first step that leads to the speed to power, if that's not there, if he's never able to recover that, then he leaves in free agency. He gets an $8 to $10 million deal and gives the Titans a 5th or a 6th round comp pick. Which, when I talked about trading T'Vondre Sweat, I said Titans probably get a 4th at best, a 5th or a 6th, more likely. Well, you're going to end up getting that pick anyway if Jermaine Johnson leaves in free agency after the year. And again, you're only paying $11 million for him this year. And you have $120 million in cap space. So there's just such little risk with this move and so much reward. But we need to make sure that we understand who Jermaine Johnson is. He is not a dominant number 1 alpha edge rusher. He is a very good cleanup edge rusher as part of a rotation. And here's another aspect that we have to consider. Robert Saleh wanted this guy. Robert Saleh was trying to get this guy for San Francisco. I talked about it on my emergency episode afterwards, but the San Francisco 49ers offered a 3rd round pick for Jermaine Johnson last season. And the Jets said, no, we want a 2nd round pick. And then the Titans got him for T'Vondre Sweat, which means that Sweat had a 2nd or 3rd round pick value to the Jets, which is nuts to me. As a 2-down run stuffing nose tackle who I think should have been a 4th round pick 2 years ago and would not get taken in the 2nd round if you redid the draft. So incredible value. And you know why San Francisco wanted to get him? Because Robert Saleh loves him. He is Robert Saleh's guy. I just watched a press conference from Robert Saleh talking about Jermaine Johnson from a couple of years ago when he was still the coach of the New York Jets, saying that he is truly everything you could ever want in a football player. He's underrated. He isn't appreciated enough. This is Robert Saleh's dude. And I think betting on Robert Saleh, betting on Mike Borgonzi is what really gives me confidence. This is going to absolutely work out. But again, everything that he is that we need to be excited about, at the same time, we need to understand who he isn't as well. So with that being said, let's dive into a conversation that I had with John Butchko from Locked On Jets about Jermaine Johnson and the trade overall from both different angles. Do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Welcome to the 5 Hour Energy flavor draft with 18 different flavors to choose from, including new options like Confetti Craze, Fruity Rainbow, or Cotton Candy. There's something for everyone. The board is set, the flavors are ready, and I've got my number one pick for the 5 Hour Energy flavor draft, and I'm going to keep going back to the flavor that I trust the most, the best flavor on the board. And that is the grape. It's got that Concord grape flavor that's similar to grape juice or candy. It's soft. It's a rounded sweetness, smooth, almost syrup-like in the fruit profile. It's consistent. It has a straightforward taste. It's that classic purple candy style finish. But if I had to go with the sleeper, I'm going with the peach mango. It's got that ripe peach flavor on the first sip, and then the mango comes in to add that tropical depth and sweetness. It's also a smooth, rounded fruit profile, slightly richer in the mouthfeel than some of the other citrus flavors. Sweet, aromatic finish. It's got a balanced tropical blend that I absolutely love. Find your new favorite flavor of 5 Hour Energy shots, available online now at 5hourenergy.com. That's the number 5, hourenergy.com, or on Amazon. On Titans, Locked On Jets listeners, welcome in a big-time trade. The Titans and the Jets kick off trade season in the NFL with a player swap. Usually you'll see player for draft pick for a couple of other draft picks, but the rare player for player swap. And as we kind of get into our thoughts, it'll be pretty clear why both these teams made this move. But John, I do want to ask you first, you see this trade, Jermaine Johnson, 4 years with the Jets. What was your kind of take on his tenure with the Jets and what kind of player that he is?
I wasn't surprised completely that the Jets decided to move on from him. Now, during his career, he generally speaking was a pretty productive player. His rookie season, he was a quality rotational guy. Year 2, 2023, that was his best season. He had 8 sacks. He made the Pro Bowl. Now, I love Jermaine. I don't know that he really should have made the Pro Bowl that year.
Yeah, the Pro Bowl is wonky now.
Yeah, I think that maybe that was a bit of a shaky pick, but he had a good season. He was a good defensive end that year. The question for him is whether he can ever recover from the Achilles injury he suffered. Ironically, it was in the game against the Tennessee Titans in 2024, week 2. I think that was the last time we spoke. The last time we did a crossover was right before that game.
Yeah.
It was week 2. He suffered an injury. He was out for the season, ruptured an Achilles tendon, came back in 2025 and did not really look like the same guy. There wasn't the same level of explosiveness, had a down season. So I wasn't surprised the Jets traded him from the standpoint that he's playing on the 5th-year option, $13.4 million. I think there are questions about how well he fit Aaron Glenn's scheme in a way that there aren't questions about whether he fits Robert Saleh's scheme. He played very well under Robert Saleh. He's a guy who's a better run defender than a pass rusher. You look at his season sack totals. Year 1, he had 2.5. Year 2, he had 7.5. Year 3, he was injured the whole year. But year 4, 3 sacks. So a guy who's been very stout against the run, but up and down as a pass rusher. And again, the Achilles is the big question because some guys, that's a career-altering injury. Based on what we saw last year with Jermaine, I think you have to have those concerns. If he bounces back and gets back to that 2023 form where he's posting something like 7.5, 8 sacks, then, he's a really solid starter. He's a guy who, you can feel really good about sticking at one of your defensive end spots.
And I think that's what's going to be key for the Titans is they don't have a lot of depth at edge right now. So getting a guy who can fill one of those spots, and you talked about the scheme fit, Aaron Glenn going more to a 3-4, and we'll talk about how Sweat fits in that perfectly as well. But with the Titans going from a 3-4 to more of a 4-3 alignment with 4 down linemen, you're going to need more of a prototypical defensive end than that stand-up outside linebacker. And I think Johnson does fit that need in that good season that he had. I know you said he was a better run defender than a pass rusher, but in that good season that he had his sophomore year, what did it look like? Like why was he impressive in that year?
He's got power, but he also is very athletic, and that's really where the Achilles comes in. So he's got kind of got like this ability to, he's got a pretty good power, but he also can explode out of the stance. So, he's just a guy who's, I think, very well-rounded. I've always said that he was kind of like he was the best all-around defensive end the Jets had. It wasn't though that he did anything spectacularly. It's just there weren't really any weaknesses in his game.
Yeah, I think the Titans desperately need something like that if he's able to return to form. And it sounds like Robert Saleh was desperately trying to get him on the 49ers last year, and the Jets turned down a third-round pick to keep him. So I'm a little bit surprised that they would give him away for Sweat. But moving to the T'Vondre Sweat kind of side of this, I think from my perspective, there's some concerns about T'Vondre Sweat off the field. Is he a hard enough worker and things like that? But from a scheme perspective, if the Jets are going more 3-4, having that, prototypical nose tackle, T'Vondre Sweat does fill that need. So from the Jets perspective, what's kind of the excitement for getting a guy like Sweat?
Well, I think part of it is the Jets were kind of just trying to get Jermaine Johnson's salary off the books because I don't think he was a long-term million. Yeah, he wasn't a long-term player for the team. If we're being objective, this is going to be a tough year for the Jets. So, if Jermaine was going to leave after the season anyway, I don't know what the sense of keeping him on the books for $13.4 million is. And when you're talking about a move that's really financial, when you can get a quality role player in return, it's kind of a nice bonus. The other thing I'd say is the Jets are kind of at the beginning stages of yet another rebuild, and we've had various versions of rebuilds in New York over the last 15 years or so. But I think the plan is starting to take focus right now on the offensive side of the ball. The one area where the Jets are okay is the offensive line, where they've got 3 young players who are good. And Armand Membu, Joe Tippmann, and
Membu's great.
Yeah, he really is. And on the defensive side of the ball, the talent level is not super high, but with the addition of Sweat, you now have 3 quality NFL defensive tackles in Sweat, Jawan Briggs, and Harrison Phillips. And look, none of them are stars, but you're seeing that this regime is kind of building out from the trenches, which I think is a good approach. So I think it kind of fits in with what the Jets are doing because as the Jets begin yet another attempt to turn this thing around, they're starting on the interior. They're starting at the point of attack by trying to add young quality linemen.
I think most people would say that building from the trenches is the right way to build things out. And listen, I've said I've never been a big fan of T'Vondre Sweat. I famously called him a disaster pick after he was picked 38. And, honestly, I was wrong about him being a disaster. He wasn't a disaster for the Titans. He's a pretty good player. He was a top 5. If you take PFF into account, Pro Football Focus, he was a top 5 interior defensive lineman last year. But the issue with Sweat is that he is really just a 2-down run stuffer. And I caught your short video after the trade was made, and it sounded like you had a pretty good handle on who he is as a player. He's not going to give you much in the pass rush, but the Jets didn't take him 38 overall. That's not something that they need to worry about. And the way that you positioned it of, hey, they're probably not going to have Jermaine Johnson around. He costs more money than they want to pay for him. Let's get in a guy who can actually do something for us and help us be better against the run. From the Jets' perspective, they're not giving up the number 38 pick to get T'Vondre Sweat. And he is a good run-stuffing, 2-down player. Do you think that the Jets, if they have a down year this year, next year is going to be T'Vondre Sweat's final year of his rookie deal? Do you think that they would potentially consider him part of the future going forward if he does prove to be a good fit for the defense?
I do. I think that part of this is they're looking for guys who have a certain attitude. And I think that this is, like I said, this is very much a rebuild situation. They are trying to build around younger guys, and Sweat's entering year 3. He's a guy who, if he looks like a solid player, I'm sure that they'd look to bring him back. And like one of the big things for me is, I saw that his PFF grade too. They was rated like a top 5 interior defensive lineman, and like you got to take PFF grades with a grain of salt. You got to put them into context. He's not a star, and I don't think anybody should expect him to be a star. But good defenses aren't built solely around stars. You need role players. You need guys who can stop the run on first and second downs. So I think if you go into the season with the proper expectations, you can be pretty happy with Sweat. He's going to be a rotational guy. I imagine he'll be the number 3 guy behind Briggs and Phillips, and it gives the Jets pretty good depth at the defensive tackle spots, which is not something you could say about many spots on the field for this team. And if you're going to start anywhere, as we said, the trenches, the defensive tackle spot, that's a good place to start when you're building depth.
Yeah, they're trying to take a strength and make it even more of a strength. And I think that is a logical way to go about it. I will say it's kind of funny that the Titans and the Jets have made 2 trades in the past, 6 or 8 months, however long ago it was, with Jarvis Brownlee Jr. and Tavondre Sweat. And both guys were kind of considered like, do we really want them in the locker room? And the Jets are a young, rebuilding team as well, and they are not concerned about having those guys in the locker room. Do you have any concern about Sweat maybe not being the hardest worker, maybe not being someone who's locked in the offseason? Brownlee Jr., again, another player who was a pretty good player, but, he had some bouts with the coaching staff and anything. Do you think that Aaron Glenn is going to be able to kind of get the best out of those guys, even if they may not be perfect locker room Boy Scouts?
That's the question. And I think this speaks to a bigger question about whether Aaron Glenn is the right guy for the job.
Right.
Year 1 did not go well. Nobody expected the Jets to do big things in 2025, but the way that this team played, particularly down the stretch, I think was alarming. You could say they were tanking. Well, they had a 5-game losing streak to end the season. After loss 2, they fired the defensive coordinator. It can't all be about tanking if you're firing a coach after a loss. Mm-hmm. The Jets became the first team in NFL history over the final 5 weeks of the season. They lost 5 straight games by 23 plus points. That's never happened before. And I mean, Tyler, I've looked this up. The Cleveland Browns team that went 0-16 in 2017, they lost 1 game by 23 plus points all season long. So the performance was really alarming. And I think it's system wide. So, when we talk about, is Aaron Glenn the right guy to get the most out of these guys, I think it's part of a bigger question whether Aaron Glenn's the right guy for the job. And that's a question that will only be answered over the course of the season.
Well, since we're talking about kind of off-field stuff, the last thing that I kind of want to hit on here is, how is Jermaine Johnson as a player in the locker room, like as a person? Is he somebody who's maybe had issues? Is he somebody who is generally considered a good teammate? I don't have a read on him as a guy on the team.
Everything I've heard is he is one of the great guys in this league, that he's beloved in the locker room. The Jets fan base loved Jermaine Johnson. And, you might see a lot of Jets fans upset online. One of the things, like I mentioned on an episode of Locked On Jets I made after the trade, was this shows you the difference between what your head tells you and your heart tells you. Your heart's looking at this guy. You're saying, this is a homegrown guy.
Right.
He's a Pro Bowl for your team. He developed into a good player. He was a great locker room guy. He was a guy who connected with the fan base. Your head tells you, $13.4 million. He's probably not going to be around in the future. Questions about the Achilles, but I have zero concerns about Jermaine. I think he's a great locker room guy. I think in that area, he's a great ad for the Titans.
I think both sides are looking at this as they won the trade, which may be a sign that it's a good trade. Usually you want both people to feel like they lost or both people to feel like they won, but how things actually play out in the future will determine who actually won this trade. But either way, both guys have a chance to really fill a need for both teams. But with that being said, that is going to do it for our little crossover conversation here. Thank you for making Locked On Titans, Locked On Jets your first to listen each and every day. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me today on today's edition of Locked On Titans. Again, very, very excited about Jermaine Johnson being added to the Tennessee Titans. He's a perfect fit for multiple reasons, even if he isn't that alpha edge rusher that the Titans still need to find. But with that being said, that's going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.